So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the Boris Johnson messing with the wrong guy in his former top advisor Dominic Cummings. And Boris Johnson has made a grade A mistake here because, as much as I dislike Dominic Cummings, the guy knows where most of the bodies are buried. He knows most of Boris Johnson's secrets, and if he wanted to, he could do some serious damage if he wanted to. And what's that saying go? Let sleeping dogs lie, or something like that. Boris Johnson messed with the wrong guy, I think. So it says here, Dominic Cummings has launched an unprecedented and extraordinary attack on Boris Johnson, alleging that the Prime Minister tried to quash the leak inquiry as it implicated an ally and hatched a possibly illegal plan for donors to pay to renovate his flat. So, for anyone who hasn't read the news, Boris Johnson accused Dominic Cummings of leaking the text messages between Boris Johnson and Sir James Dyson. Also, the fact that we've seen multiple leaks from text messages from Boris Johnson to other people. We saw recently there was a story where the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Prince Salman, tried to get Boris Johnson involved in Salman's failed bid to take over Newcastle. So someone clearly has a record of his messages and decided to leak them. And with the Dyson stuff, it does feed into the kind of Tory sleaze narrative. It's not the strongest argument against Tory sleaze, but this, alongside with the David Cameron stuff, is, in my opinion, it should be damaging. But people don't seem to care because Boris did what's best for the country. But yeah, so I don't know what the fallout's going to be from this. But if we just look at what's going on so far, It's not great, to be honest. The outburst by Dominic Cummings a day after anonymous number 10 sources claimed that he leaked private text messages between Johnson and billionaire Dyson. So Cummings used a lengthy post on his personal blog to deny any leaking, instead accused Johnson and his team of a series of wrongdoing. So he's hit him with that big counter shot here, and Boris Johnson, I don't think he was expecting it. Cummings said the Prime Minister had behaved in a way he considered mad and totally unethical. This is Dominic Cummings, Mr. £350 million to the NHS on a bus. If he's calling you mad and unethical, what the hell were you doing to get called that by him? Crazy stuff here. It's sad to see the Prime Minister and his office fall so far below the standard of competence and integrity the country deserves. I mean, they've been doing that all of last year, mate. Where were you? Oh wait, you got sacked at the end of the year. But at the start of the year, when COVID started to hit, when we didn't have the resources and stuff we needed, where were you, bro? Absolute fraud. There are no heroes in this story, only villains. Such a damning intervention by the man who was Johnson's key ally and ideological inspiration, and will deeply alarm the Prime Minister and his aides. Cummings is due to give evidence to MPs next month. So what they've done is they've decided to hit at a guy who, he was out of politics, really. He was barely involved. He speaks to, I think it's like one of the science committees, about wanting to have a high risk science department where they're going to have a lot of failures. But the whole point of it is not meant to succeed that often. It's meant to be high risk science ventures. This is all he was been talking about with select committees. Now you've given him a reason to give more information. Dominic Cummings, who left Downing Street in November, dismissed the accusations in an anonymous briefing to several newspapers on Thursday that he had leaked the text messages between Dyson and Johnson. So Dominic Cummings, having to rebut anonymous sources, which is something that he's famed for, by the way. This is something where he, they've stolen his playbook and used his own tactics against him. The Prime Minister appeared to promise that this is to Dyson, that he would fix the tax problem so that Dyson staff wouldn't have to pay tax in the UK by the looks of things. So, very dodgy. Cummings said that he had checked his phone and had not been forwarded the messages in question. He claimed he had been told by Downing Street officials that Dyson's office had emailed screenshots of his exchanges with Johnson to a series of officials, including some at the Treasury. Obviously, the Treasury were involved, and they were the ones who were meant to contact HMRC to deal with it. That's why Boris Johnson says in the messages that I spoke to Rishi and it's sorted. So it could be Dishi Rishi that's leaked the stuff, but I doubt it, because he wants the number 10 spot. So it's possible that it's Rishi, but again, it's speculation on my part. And that this, but clearly people had access to these messages. It could have even been HMRC, to be fair. Because the people at HMRC would have been told. But then again, how would they have the text messages? So it's very difficult, but someone has a screenshot of these messages and decided to leak them. Cumming said, "I'm happy to meet with the cabinet secretary and for him to search my phone for Dyson messages." The thing is, he could have deleted them. Cummings could have deleted them, but Boris Johnson would have a record of sent messages. So Boris Johnson, if Cummings was the leaker, Boris Johnson would be able to prove it. Cummings saying, if the Prime Minister did send them to me, as he is claiming, then he will be able to show the Cabinet Secretary on his phone when they were sent to me. So Cummings making the same point that I just made, which is kind of concerning because I do not like the geezer. He also says, I'm happy to publish or give the Cabinet Secretary the Prime Minister Dyson messages that I do have, which concern ventilators, bureaucracy and COVID policy, but not tax issues. So clearly he was not involved in the tax stuff, but he was obviously aware of the other situations, the ventilators, the bureaucracy that Dominic Cummings is vehemently against, and COVID policy. Cummings also addressed reports suggesting he had been the serial leaker known as the Chatty Rat, which is such a joke's name, who allegedly leaked news of another COVID lockdown last autumn. I think Michael Gove was the one who got the blame for that one because he was the one who had to do all the press conferences after. So they apparently thought it was Michael Gove, but now they think it's Dominic Cummings. It's very strange what's going on here. Cummings also claimed that in a meeting after the leak, the Cabinet Secretary Simon Case told Cummings and Johnson all the evidence pointed to Henry Newman, then an advisor at the Cabinet Office and has now moved to number 10. Newman is known to be close to Carrie Symonds, so she's Carrie Symonds' friend, essentially. Apparently they're good friends. And he's seen as a key figure that got rid of Dominic Cummings from his job. So it's possible that Newman was the one who leaked the early lockdown, but for some reason it looked like they blame Michael Gove. It's very strange. Cummings also said the Prime Minister was upset about this, and he said to me afterwards, if Newman is confirmed as the leaker, then I'll have to fire him, and this will cause me a very serious problems with Carrie as their best friends. Perhaps we could get the Cabinet Secretary to stop the leak inquiry. So it's great that Boris Johnson cares about his fiancée so much, but clearly this man, if this is the case, if this happened that he tried to stop or he stopped an inquiry into leaking because it would impact his relationship, shows you how unethical Boris Johnson is and how desperate he is to keep certain people around him. And the fact that if this sort of stuff gets out, I don't think this will stick, but it does show you the kind of man Boris Johnson is, which is he's a coward. Dominic Cummings said, I told him that this was mad and totally unethical and that he ordered the inquiry himself and authorised the Cabinet Secretary to use more invasive methods that are usually applied to leak inquiries because of the seriousness of the leak. And so I think Dominic Cummings is mad here because stuff was leaked and it wasn't leaked by him, because we can assume that he's a serial leaker. He has leaked certain information and press briefings to people like Laura Kuenssberg and Peston, etc., and more press people. So him getting mad that someone's been briefing the press is ironic, considering that that's what he normally does. Cummings said, I told him that he could not possibly cancel an inquiry about a leak that affected millions of people just because it might implicate his girlfriend's friends. Cummings did not give any further explanation to what he meant by invasive methods, so I think they were searching people's phones. Let's not forget here that Dominic Cummings was the one who had one of Sajid Javid's advisors, I think she was a senior civil servant, thrown out by armed police. So, this man Cummings is no hero, and he is also a person who knows about invasive methods. Cummings also said that he had warned some officials about Johnson's plans. He said, I also have WhatsApp messages with senior officials about the matter which are definitive. So this is about the inquiry, the leak inquiry. Boris Johnson saying, his spokesperson saying the Prime Minister has never interfered with the government leak inquiry. All right. Cummings also warned Johnson about renovations to his Downing Street flat costing a reported £58,000. So the Prime Minister claimed that Dominic Cummings is saying Boris Johnson wanted to get outside funding from Conservative supporters to fund this, and that's obviously unethical because these are Tory party donors who would have more influence over the Prime Minister by kicking out his flat, essentially. That's wrong. If you want renovations, pay for them yourself. This is ridiculous. You should not be getting your party donors to do this. It gives them more influence over him, and it also enables them to sort of bid against, get favourable things, favourable contracts. We've already seen that with the VIP lane. So Dominic Cummings said, I told him the plans, I mentioned that. Cummings and Johnson had stopped speaking to him about the issue in 2020 after he said this, adding, I would be happy to tell the Cabinet Secretary or the Electoral Commission about what I know concerning the matter. So the Electoral Commission don't have that much in terms of teeth, neither does the Cabinet Secretary, but Dominic Cummings is saying, I will go on the record and I will tell people what you were going to do with regards to, getting Tory party donors to fund his flat. Cummings also accused the new head of communications, Jack Doyle, of having given the briefing to newspapers on Thursday. So he's blaming this new guy, Jack Doyle, who's using Cummings' own tactics against him. So sick burn. Earlier, the government sought to close down the renovation controversy by releasing a statement saying no outside finance has been involved. But how do you define outside finance? Cabinet Office Minister Nicholas True revealed the contractors had been brought in to paint, sand and refurbish floorboards, but Lord True added any costs of wider refurbishment in this year have been met by the Prime Minister personally. And that's interesting because the Prime Minister has said that he's broke. He's worried about money. He can't afford a nanny, saying that his earnings have reportedly shrunk from £350,000 to £150,000 a year because he doesn't have access to his newspaper column or speaking arrangements around the country. So you're telling me this man spent 58 grand on flat renovations when he's saying he can't afford a nanny? All right. Okay, that's believable. Okay, definitely believable. Number 10 responded at all times they acted ethically, blah, 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 blah. All reportable donations are transparently declared and published either by the Electoral Commission or the House of Commons Registrar in line with the requirements set out in electoral law. So if that's the case, then he's got nothing to worry about. But if it's not, I'd be concerned. Talks about gifts and all that stuff. Cummings had written the issue needed to be handled by an urgent parliamentary inquiry into the government's conduct over the COVID crisis. He concluded the issues concerning COVID and or the Prime Minister's conduct should not be handled as Number 10 has handled them over the past 12 hours. I will cooperate fully with such an inquiry and I'm happy to give evidence under oath. So this is, Dominic Cummings always said when there's bad news or when there's, news you don't want out there, throw a dead cat on the table because then people speak about the dead cat. What Boris Johnson, as someone on Twitter pointed out, has done is thrown a cat onto the table, but it's a live one. It's a live cat and it's got claws and it's fighting back hard. Rayner said, the last 24 hours the government's been lurching between cover-up. So, not the boldest statement from her. We go to Lewis Goodall, who works for Newsnight, who gives some analysis where he talks about Cummings point blank, accuses the Prime Minister, Dominic Cummings is saying the Prime Minister's lying about Dominic Cummings being the leak. And he's saying that Boris Johnson knows this is a lie. So that's interesting because if that's the case, then either Boris Johnson knows who the leaker is and doesn't want to deal with them, or he has no idea and he's like, let's concentrate on the leaker. It could be that guy, Dominic Cummings over there. On the flat, he's saying he refused to organise these payments and therefore his knowledge is limited because he didn't want to get kind of embroiled in something that could be illegal. I suppose he has... The man skirts ethics. Let's put it that way. When it comes to certain actions and funding, etc. So let's not try and pretend he's above the law. But I don't want to get done for defamation. So for the purposes of not getting done for defamation, he is adhering to the law. The proper way for such issues to be handled is via an urgent parliamentary inquiry into the government's conduct. And, Lewis Goodall saying that normally he finds the psychodrama of this stuff tedious, but hard to overstate the seriousness of these accusations. A man who was once at the heart of Downing Street just accused the Prime Minister of dishonesty. So, these guys were friends at one point. Let's not forget that. So we go to our final article of the day, which is Boris Johnson being asked to explain the flat refurbishment. So Boris Johnson is being urged to explain how the refurbishment of his flat was paid for. And if it's the case that, if he paid for it himself, I don't think he has to actually declare that, how much it cost, etc. But for a guy who's claiming he doesn't have enough money to afford a nanny, which I don't know how much that costs, but you can afford 58 grand for flat renovations. I don't know, man. It seems a bit dodgy. Dominic Cummings claimed the Prime Minister once had possibly illegal plans to get Tory donors to fund the work. Starmer saying, publish the details, have a full inquiry if there's nothing to see here, have a full inquiry. A bit of a lawyery answer. So, what can we learn from what Cumming said? He denied leaking the text messages sent between Johnson and Sir James Dyson, denied leaking details of the second lockdown in England in November, alleged Mr. Johnson had considered trying to block an inquiry into the leak in case a friend or his fiancée Simmons in case it involved a friend of his fiancée, Carrie Simmons, a claim rejected by Number 10, claimed the Prime Minister once had a possibly illegal plan for donors to pay for renovations to Downing Street. So those are the main kind of points. There's some analysis here from Jonathan Blake saying that if you're tempted to roll your eyes and think it's just sour grapes from a jilted employee advisor, think again. Dominic Cummings' blog is proof that he's willing to lift the lid on his time at the heart of Downing Street, regardless of how it reflects on the Prime Minister. He doesn't care. He'll burn all the bridges. Because Boris Johnson fired a shot at him. This man's dropping mortar rounds, and he does not care who it lands on. The analysis is going to say there are questions over the financing of the renovation of the Downing Street flat and the leak of a plan to impose a lockdown. The level of detail shows that Mr. Cummings is willing to expose others while defending himself and lay bare the inner workings of Number 10. Also, the fact that they've had about 5-6 months to figure out who the leaker is. So most likely, if they have figured it out, and if it was that Newman guy, I'm pretty sure he's still there. So it could have been him. And he's still there because Boris Johnson doesn't have the heart to fire his fiance's friend, or they just still haven't figured out somehow. I don't know, because there weren't that many people in the meetings, so it's very strange. In his blog, Cummings claimed the Prime Minister once planned to have donors secretly pay for renovations, something we've mentioned. Mr. Johnson stopped speaking to me about the matter, about the flat renovations in 2020, as he told him the renovation plans. So Cummings told Johnson the renovation plans were unethical, foolish, and possibly illegal, and almost certainly broke the rules on proper disclosure of political donations if he conducted in that way. So for some reason, Cummings draws the line there, which is very strange. Very strange. Shadow Secretary Steve Reed said, "We're calling for the government to publish any correspondence related to payments or donations about the refurbishment. We need to know what the full amount that was spent, and we need to know who paid for the work in the first place that the Prime Minister now proposes to reimburse." So if the Prime Minister is reimbursing someone, that means someone else covered it and it was got out via a loan or he borrowed the money. If that's the case, it looks very sus, because that means that he did borrow the money from someone, potentially a party donor, or maybe someone else, but he should never have been in that situation, because if that is the case, that means someone has a debt that is owed to them from the Prime Minister, which is very dodgy. Especially since I don't know how much renovation Downing Street actually needed. Surely if it's that bad, you could get the taxpayer to do it. Not saying I would support that much, but Downing Street flat, I think he lives in number 11. I can't remember which one it was, but this is where the Prime Minister lives. If the taxpayers are expected to pay out for the palaces of the royal family, then they should be paying out for Number 10, really. Anyways, the lockdown leak. So Cummings also denied being the leak of the lockdown in November. So what can we gather from the video? I think these bullet points somewhere up here kind of sum up what's going on. Boris Johnson has accused Dominic Cummings of leaking text messages between Boris Johnson and James Dyson. Boris Johnson also looks like he's accused Dominic Cummings of leaking the lockdown that happened in November. We don't know if that's the case. It's alleged that it's someone else, and it's also alleged that Boris Johnson stopped an inquiry because it could have implicated his fiance's friend, and Boris Johnson's like, that would put me in an awkward position with my fiancée as they are best friends, so I cannot do it. I must stop the inquiry. We don't know. But they never found the leaker, so read into that what you will. Dominic Cummings finally claims that Boris Johnson once had a possibly illegal plan for donors to pay for renovations to his Downing Street flat. So, Boris Johnson kind of just threw a jab at the guy, and Dominic Cummings is throwing haymakers in the first round. And we don't know how much information he actually has, but what we do know is that there's some as we always thought, there's some deeply dodgy things going on in Westminster, and that Dominic Cummings might actually reveal the details of it. But I do wonder how much of this stuff how much of this stuff is he implicated in? That's the key question. And how much of this stuff is he willing to tell the select committees and whoever else wants to listen, the press? But Dominic Cummings, they used his own tactics against him, and it backfired because this man knows where the bodies are buried. You do not attack a man like that. It'd be like if Epstein attacked Ghislaine Maxwell. Like, you don't do that because this person has dirt on you. They know exactly some of the dodgy things that you've done. I wouldn't be surprised if Dominic Cummings had information on Boris Johnson's Jennifer Corey affair as well. I would not be surprised. And, if he leaked that sort of information as well, gee, that would be really damaging. But do I think that the people care about these leaks? Not much. I don't think most people see Boris Johnson as a bit dodgy, but they see him as a guy who does his best, and Keir Starmer's failing to make the argument that he could do a better job. And so long as that's the case, then nothing changes. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe.